this class, I'm going to take you through relative density. Okay, so now when you talk of relative density, you say it is the density of a material. It is the density of a material compared to another. So if you have two materials, let's say you have material A and material B. So if you compare these two materials, their densities, you are saying you are taking the relative density of the two materials. Okay, so now with relative density, mostly you take the density of whatever material has been given to you and you compare it with another material. So but mostly for solids and liquid, their relative density is compared to water. Okay, though we can also compare the relative density of solids and liquid to liquids like petrol or oil. But relative density is a ratio. Okay, so let's say you have material A and material B. So relative density, let's say is relative density of the material will be what? The density of material A dividing density of what? Material B. So we say density of A over density of B. But mostly the B represents the density of what? Water. Okay, now if we take the ratio of two densities, you get relative density. Okay, that means you are comparing them. And relative density, it has no unit because it is what? A ratio of two densities. So the units, they will divide each other, making it what? Unitless. So it will not have any unit. Okay, so now what happens if I get a relative density? In other words, what is the essence of relative density? Now, if you have a relative density, let's say RD, and is greater than 1, that means any object that has its relative density greater than 1, that particular object will sink in water. It will sink in water. If you have a relative density to be less than 1, that material that has the relative density to be less than 1 will what? Float in water. For our studies today, we're taking relative density with reference to water. Okay, so we say relative density will be equal to what? Density of material dividing the density of water. Okay, so if you find relative density, we use this formula. Relative density equals density of the material dividing the density of water. Okay, so let's say you have a material that has a density of 1,200 kilograms per meter cube. Okay, so the density of the material is what? 1,200 kilogram per meter cube. Okay, then the density of water is always 1 gram per centimeter cube or 1,000 kilogram per meter cube. Okay, so this is the density of water. That one is constant. The density of water is constant here. Okay, so we have the density of material and density of water. So if you say a material has a density of 1,200 kilograms per meter cube, and the density of water is what? 1,000 kilograms per meter cube. And you are asked to calculate for the relative density. Example, you take what the relative density will be equal to the density of the material, which is 1,200 kilograms per meter cube, over the density of water, which is what? 1,000 kilograms per meter cube. Okay, now you realize that the units here is the same as the units there. Okay, so you can't take it in a way that the units will be different. So if the density of the material is given to you in grams per centimeter cube, we're going to use 1 gram per centimeter cube as the density of water. But if the density of the material is given to you in kilogram per meter cube, that means you are going to take what? 1,000 kilogram per meter cube as the density of water. So if you divide this, the units will divide each other. Then 2 zeros will divide 2 zeros here. So now 12 dividing 10, you get the relative density to be what? 1.2. Okay, so that's how to calculate for the relative densities of materials. So let's take a question. Density of 1,500 kilogram per meter cube. Calculate its relative density given that the density of water is 1,000 kilogram per meter cube. So now with this question, we need to write the parameters in the question out. Okay, so we have density of material, density of block to equal to 1,500 kilogram per meter cube, and density of water is equal to what? 1,000 kilogram per meter cube. So density of water is equal to 1,000 kilogram per meter cube. Okay, so now we know relative density to equal to density of material dividing the density of what? Water. So density of material over density of water. Okay, so now for this, our material is a block and the density of water is 1,000. So the density of the material is what? 1,500 kilogram per meter cube. And then the density of water is 1,000 kilogram per meter cube. Now with this will divide this. Okay, leaving 15 dividing 10. And 15 dividing 10 is 1.5. So the relative density of the piece of block from this question is 1.5. Is 1.5. And this is greater than 1. That means if you place that particular piece of block in water, it will sink. Okay, so